Nothing great can be achieved without the elementary curiosity of the philosopher.
Discovery, go at throttle up.
Thank you very much. This is the first episode of the mojaview Live. Thank you very much for joining us today. I am Tadashi Sugihara.
And I'm Irina, and I'm Irina Filonova. So welcome again. So as Tadashi said, this is our trial and error first episode of mojaview. And if you're just wondering, what is that? So this is something that Tadashi and I thought of having for quite some time, because what we realized, while there's a lot of things for early career researchers in different professions, there's not much out there for people who do our jobs, which are research management administration or university research administrations or people in higher ed. So we got together, so both of us are scientists, and we decided, okay, there gotta be a way to share our knowledge and learn from you to make the world of higher education a better place. Who wouldn't like to see that, right? And we call this spirit a mojaview, and moja, from what I understand, is Japanese for hairy. And I always think about grunge style. For you who are familiar with 90s, so this is kind of like a different alternative way to look at higher education, at our profession, and just figure out what we are doing. So let me start with maybe brief introduction of the person who probably will be talking the most. Let's hope not. So my name is Irina, and I am a neuroscientist. I am a coach, and I'm an academic developer. So my background is a PhD in biomedical sciences. Then it was fun. I went to big research facility to do my postdoc. I wanted to be faculty. I published, and then I moved to Japan to be an academic developer, where I worked with Tadashi for about 4 years, helping postdocs, faculty and students just to navigate complex environment of higher education and finally getting a job. So this is how I met Tadashi. And Tadashi, could you please tell us who you are and introduce our guests as well?
Hi, okay, so I am Tadashi Sugihara, and I'm working in Okinawa Institute of Science and Technology as a manager of grants and research collaboration section. And I was also a neuroscientist, but so-called system neuroscience. And I did some work about the computational simulation study and the statistical analysis and psychophysics. And I was really hoping to become a principal investigator, but I changed my mind to be a research administrator. And I got a job in Kyoto University. And now I am here in Okinawa, the very tropical island. And I'm very happy to host this show and introduce my guest today. Okay.
Perfect. And so Tadashi, let's go ahead and do the introductions of Elly and Lisa, and then we'll move to the session descriptions and go from there.
Okay, so first, could you please, we would like to start with the introduction of Elly. Elly is, Elly is international research grants manager at the University of Technology, Sydney. Thank you very much for joining, Elly.
Thanks for having us. Do you want me to continue? So just briefly from what, from what Tadashi just said.
Yeah, please tell us
so
all
I'm at
about your life story.
I'm at the University of Technology in Sydney, Australia. I can see a lot of names that look like that from Australia here. So hi and welcome everyone. Primarily I'm involved in the Central Research Office looking after our international competitive grants that go out to international funders. So I deal with the pre-award, post-award submissions. I don't have a PhD. My background is just, I have a bachelor's in business and purely fell into research management support by accident, as a lot of us sort of do as well. So thanks.
That's awesome.
And then another guest is Lisa. Lisa is the Director Research Partnership at the University of Queensland. Thank you, Lisa. Could you please kindly introduce a little bit?
So Lisa Kennedy, Director Research Partnerships at the University of Queensland, also Secretary of Region VIII International Region for NCURA. Very happy to be here today, and I used to be, it seems like a lifetime ago, a criminology researcher at the University of Queensland, and now I'm happy to say that in my current role, I do bringing together deals for major projects. So a lot of the big deals that we do with industry come through my office, and I help negotiate contracts on a lot of the larger projects that UQ does. I'm particularly proud of the work that UQ has done in the development of the UQ vaccine, which is not dead yet, just for reference. And yeah, thank you so much to Irina and to Tadashi for doing this presentation today. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you for introduction. So we are looking forward. And what are we looking forward, right? So that's a big question. So what we're hoping from this session to have two parts. The first one is just to talk a little bit about careers of researchers, early career researchers that I just happen to be very familiar with. And we'll just take about 5 to 10 minutes. And this is where we'll talk about transferable skills. And I really would love to hear everybody's opinion. What do we think about the skills that are needed in higher education and for the career progression? And then we will move to the section when we will specifically touch upon this research administration as a profession, because I can tell you, I had no idea it existed when I was doing research. So these are the hidden people who drive the research forward, because we think about scientists, yay, research, yeah, but what about the support, right? What about us? And I'm really hoping that more and more researchers and professionals will move into this area of higher education. So why they're not moving to this higher education, part one, because I think partially researchers don't think they have skills. So for the last, I don't know, 4 or 5 years, I've been working with postdocs who come to me and say, Irina, I don't want to be a faculty anymore. I want to do something else. I have no idea what it is that I want to do, but I want to do it. And I said, okay, so let's brainstorm. You know, there's research administrators, science writers, there's, you know, criminology, whatever you want to do. And they tell me I have no skills. At this point, I remember myself during my postdoc thinking exactly the same thing. I have no skills. The only thing I know how to do is to do research. And what is research for me? It's something very, very technical. I know how to use animals to get electro recordings, whatever that is. I know how to analyze data, but specifically to the behavior. So I am useless, I'm worthless. And this is where they end up being. So this is where I come with my bag full of tools, and I just pull one that's called transferable skills. This is where I tell my researchers, okay, you guys and girls are awesome because you have very versatile skills of researchers. So I wonder if you have in the Zoom chat, what do you think the skills are of the researchers? If you can type a couple of things, or professionals who work in higher education, what do you think the top skills are? If you can type in the Zoom chat, project management, yay, love that one. Mm-hmm. Anything else? What comes to mind? Relationship management for collaborations. I wish my postdocs would tell me that. You're all prepared. Report writing. Yes. Any other skills researchers might possess that could be useful for their career transition? So I'll keep watching the chat. So teamwork skills, right? So teamwork is a tricky one. We not necessarily think about researchers. They don't think about themselves as team players because research is cultivating independence. That's why we do need to persuade future employees that researchers can work as a team. Yes, absolutely. All of this and above. And so what I tell them, okay, people, you can do any job because number one skill that you have is creative problem solving. So exactly, Aditi, you were just reading my mind as I was saying, you were typing, that's awesome. Because scientists and researchers have been trained to solve problems creatively, sometimes with little or no budget. The second one, of course, is analytical thinking, right? Data-driven decision and communication. Sometimes I have to persuade researchers that they are good communicators. They say, well, we're not public speakers, we don't like it, yet they present to international crowd at international conferences their complicated research. Another one that I think is useful all over the place is project and time management. If you are able to get bachelor degree, master's degree, and a PhD, you know how to manage your time. You might not think that, but you absolutely do. The same as the project. Dissertation is a project in itself. Also, legal and other requirements. And this is something doesn't come across that well because we think we're just in the lab. However, we have to deal with safety and different IRB protocols. And the last one I want to just talk a little bit is flexibility and adaptability. Do we think about scientists and researchers as adaptable and flexible? Honestly, not necessarily. People who support researchers, they know that sometimes there's this very narrow linear thinking. And so right now in pandemic, a lot of employees are just looking for people who are adaptable and flexible. And this is where we need to do a little bit of coaching around this, because as we know, it has to be this way. However, I think researchers are very keen on being adaptable and flexible, because just think about the research project. 95% of failure. My numbers, not statistics. I wish somebody did it. If you went through the research project, chances are you had to deal with failure, you had to change it, you have to move around, you have to optimize. You do have to be flexible to work in a team while you don't want to work in a team or work with a PI who maybe not aligning with you in expectations. So researchers do have this adaptability and flexibility. And all the skills we've just discussed, starting with problem solving, data-driven decision, communication, time management, legal affairs, adaptability, and so on, are incredibly useful when they are considering to move into research administration. The trick is to explain what it is. Because sometimes when I tell them, what about my job? And my job was not grant management. My job was people development. People were shocked to learn that I'm coming from a scientific background. So I think in this following part, I really would love to just get our opinion of Elly, Lisa, and Tadashi, what it is to be research administrator. How is it? What is that you do? And how one can take all those transferable awesome skills and translate them into RMA positions. Tadashi, please take it from here.
Okay. Yeah. First, when I think about myself, when I was a researcher, I honestly did not know the role of this administrative works, because yeah, as Irina said, most of the young researchers try to carry out the experiments every day, and they try to find a position somewhere else. It starts from tenure track and the tenure. And other than this very important goal, my vision probably was very, very narrow. But it was very fortunate that I got a chance to see many those supportive people in the Johns Hopkins and the Riken Institute. And I saw they are really supporting us, trying to solve the problems. That experience was very much important when I decided to change my career. And yeah, first of all, we are researchers. I mean, researchers are not very much aware of how many skills they have already acquired in other contexts other than research. So one of the things I usually recommend is to meet the administrative staffs in their institutions. In weekend, every week, we had a very casual meeting, casual dinner party like that in a very cheap restaurant. And so we got a chance to talk to many experienced researchers, and they have very nice stories about the distinguished researchers' achievements, background stories. So it may be a good idea to hear such stories from their administrative staff. Then the researchers will see what kind of skills they have may be useful to support other researchers. What about Elly? Any comments?
Elly, we wonder what kind of skills do you think are important?
Yeah, you both touched on a lot of the skills. I would add, communication skills and team building, are really essential to sort of doing sort of a role in research support. And I think, whether you're a scientist or, coming from a non-science background, those are just like key skills to bring across into sort of any environment. So that's sort of my 2 points there.
Yeah.
Lisa?
I think one of the things that I've noticed is in making the, trip across the administrative or divide is that oftentimes the researchers will be so engaged with what they want to achieve through the research that they're wanting to do, but they're insufficiently appraised of the constraints or the requirements that a funding sponsor, somebody who's providing the money for the research has placed on the research, the reason why the project has actually been scoped in the first place. And I think that the most important skill that we bring to this role is, possibly being bilingual, so that we can translate the wishes of the researchers for the goals that they have and the rabbit hole that they want to go down and explore with what the contractual requirements are that actually bind the scope of the project. So I would say that's pretty damn important.
Yeah. Lisa, I wonder, you just said that, Tadashi, can I just ask my question, not a coaching question, promise. So how do you just prevent them from going down the rabbit hole? So because I do, even in my job as a developer, I experienced that how are you? And then I have 15 minutes of detailed explanation how black holes work. That's not what I wanted. Right. So I wonder, Lisa, if you have any kind of thought on that.
So I couldn't catch your point. Could you please rephrase?
They rephrase my point is, so what would be the suggestions to work with scientists who tend to go down the rabbit hole, and talk about their research instead of just, kind of going for the project that needs to be completed from the grant's perspective?
Does anyone know what's good
Lisa,
answer?
is it like, did you understand my question?
I'm sorry, I may ask.
That's okay. So let's see what Lisa got from that.
Yeah, sorry.
So some of the best tips are to spend time with the researchers and to actually understand what makes them tick. And so that involves time that you would spend with them apart from, when you've got a deadline looming. So this is like a long-term investment in the research outcomes, so that we've spent quite a bit of time actually reading their journal articles, understanding what it is that makes them get out of bed in the morning, and then being able to talk to them with some of the things that we know are really important to them and about how that relates to what somebody who might fund the research requires from the project. It also involves us being able to translate what the industry person or the competitive granting body wants from the research, and then being able to explain that to the researcher so they understand, well, this bit is what you're required to do, and I know you want to do this bit, but you have to do this bit separate to this bit. And often that means, we have a conversation about defining what's their intellectual property, so that we can define it as background intellectual property and carving that out from other stuff that they might want to pursue during the course of the project.
Yeah, great. No, great suggestions. Tadashi, back to you. I know we had a plan.
Okay. So as Irina said, there are many skills. And I also would like to emphasize one of the skills I think in my daily life is important is time management. And because when I was a researcher, I understand, I am trying to find something unexplored. It means that there is no deadline. Deadline is when I have to leave this office. But in the business world, we always have some deadline. And I clearly learned when I worked with the company when I was still a researcher. So one of the very striking question is when my finding will be in the product line. And I couldn't answer that question, and I really had no idea how I should respond to such question. So if some of the researchers are trying to find a job as research management, then time management would be very much important. But other than that, probably they will learn very quickly. So another feature is to be a good learner. So that's the important point, I think.
Yeah.
I would add to Lisa's point earlier too that having those discussions with them is important. Just making sure things are simplified. We may be speaking the same language, but the technical languages are very different. They may not understand us when we say overruns, for example, on a project, and we may not understand them when they say gliomas.
Yeah.
So
Elly, what helps? What helps to understand the language?
Asking about, I would say, like from a researcher's perspective, having them tell us in, a lay summary, like how would you describe this to somebody like, in high school or a 10-year-old? How would you describe what you do? Yeah.
I've done this just kind of for this when I practice interviews with them, right? I said just like nobody can understand what you're doing, and I think just kind of going back to Tadashi, what skills that researchers should try to hone is speaking clearly, as if they are speaking to a high schooler or to a grandmother who just was born in 1900s. So that would be helpful. Yeah.
And that must be somewhat related to your earlier question. And just a few days ago, I interviewed one of the young researcher about quantum computing. And I made some list of the questions, and I asked him to think about the appropriate answers. But when I asked him, I said, most of the people cannot understand your research. And the goal of this interview is not to disseminate your research to your research community, but to the people who may be interested in this kind of research, and they are hoping the future of quantum computing. So I made a very, very easy question, which means very difficult for him to answer. And I also had one very funny question, like if you compare your team to something else, like a fruit or animals, what was that? Then probably the professor understands what I really need. So he tried to choose easier words to explain the purpose of research. And it seems that it worked fine.
Yeah.
That's my episode.
What come into my mind, so to be a successful research manager, RMA, you need patience.
Yes.
Right? So you just need to kind of sit there and be like, yeah, I get it. No, yeah. Do it again.
I think Irina and also Elly and Lisa had a same experience. If we try to show the passion to understand their research themselves, then I think they will respond to our attitudes. They try to find appropriate words to understand, for us to understand the details of their concept of researches. And it seems that it works. So that kind of passion is very much important for the research managers to approach the researchers.
Yeah. So Elly and Lisa, anything to add to the passion for listening? No, it's all good. We just need to be patient and have passion as well.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. So I think this is the end of the first subject. And we are going to move to the next one. We would like to further explore the URA, or University Research Administrators, or sometimes called research managers and administrators as a profession. So we probably understand that there are many job opportunities for early career researchers, and one of them is research administrators. And I think early career researchers should try to widen their views about the possible jobs other than in academia. But today we have two guests, experienced research managers here. So we would like to ask Lisa and Elly about their career paths first. And also we would like to ask them to introduce their day-to-day jobs. So first, could Elly, can you, you may have already talked about the career a little bit in the earlier introduction, but I appreciate if you just quickly go through your career path.
Sure. I'll keep it short because, you know, I don't think I have that much to add. I am still very young. Just at the start of my career. So just about my background, I got a bachelor's degree in business and international studies. So double bachelor's, and from there I wanted to pursue a career in marketing. And so right out of university, my idea was to look for an opportunity as a level entry into marketing. And I got a job as a sales administrator for a sort of small startup. This is in 2011, so 10 years. That career didn't last very long. Within 3 months to 6 months of being in that role, I decided that I didn't want to pursue the marketing pathway anymore. It wasn't sort of for me. I wasn't sort of in that competitive nature, and decided that I needed a bit of a life experience instead. So part of my life experience, I decided to travel overseas, and I had a goal of living in different countries for 5 years before returning back to Australia. So back in 2011, I was in Australia, in Sydney, and decided to just, leave and go to the US for a year. And my plan from there was to then move over to Canada and then the UK and eventually come home. So what ended up happening was I went off to the US and accidentally landed a role as an executive assistant for a director of a department in a small hospital called Massachusetts General Hospital. So not knowing anything about the world, it turned out to be the largest hospital receiving research income in the US. And my career sort of grew from there. My interest, the executive assistant role turned out to be more of a program administrator, manager role, where I then moved into managing the internal grants for the hospital. So we gave out funding for our researchers. And this sort of evolved from like small projects to large projects where we funded, $500,000 to $50,000 projects, and decided that that's the career that I wanted to move into, supporting research. And from there, I moved on to being a research administrator in the US and to a different department, to the senior administrator, and then moved to Australia, where I'm now managing the international grants, and that's at the University of Technology in Sydney. And here I am 10 years later, purely sort of, like I said, randomly landing a job in one of the largest medical research institute in the US, and pretty happy with the path that I've taken.
I love the chance, Elly, the serendipity. Sometimes we plan careers, it's supposed to be A, B, C, and we end up with like A, T, Z, and then back to A. And so, 5 years planned of traveling the world and ended up in Massachusetts General. Wow.
Oh, and I forgot to add that I stayed there for just under 7 years. It was like 6 years and 10 months. So my 5-year plan to travel and see the world, was short-lived. One country.
It was a reference point. It moved you across the world, so that was enough. That's a very cool story.
Yeah, I think many of the researchers know the presence of MGH That's really, famous hospital.
Yeah.
So now you are working on the mostly international grants, I guess. And so are you involved with both pre-award and post-award?
Yeah, so my role is, it's a central role where it's, all pre-award, and that will involve things where on a day-to-day I could be receiving an email or a call from a researcher that wants to look for funding, doesn't know where to start. So we'll have a discussion about identifying opportunities to, my grant is due tomorrow. I need to figure out how to use this system, and to, having an application being reviewed with possibly, a month in advance notice. So there's a lot of, last minute random things that sort of pop up on a day-to-day. So it's never really a structured day, to then looking after post-award matters. And post-award matters could be things like, can I charge, travel to my award? Or can I move funding around? Would like to request an extension for the project. Adding new organizations or researchers. So it's very wide too.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. So what about Lisa?
So I think that when I was a baby researcher, I think that some of the lessons that I learned, or the things that I carry with me now, are about a passion for research itself, and about what an incredible job that is, being a researcher, to uncover things and discover things, like really the best job in the world. So yeah, I think that passion for research is a lesson from being a baby researcher is really, really important with the person that I am now in my job. My next job was as a centre manager, managing that project that I worked for, and some other ones along the way. And some of the things I learned in that job, because I was responsible for coding data, recruiting people who were working on the project, and bringing together the journal articles that came from the research. And so one of the things that I learned from back then is, if you don't plan to use the research to translate into something that's good for society, then it won't happen. It just doesn't happen if those underpinning blocks don't happen at the beginning of the project. So moving on from there, I actually then took a baby break, and I learned a lot about that, but probably haven't got time for that now. And then I went and I worked in industry for 6 years. And the lesson I learned there is that those on the inside of universities don't talk the same language as the people who are outside of universities. And so I learned some really valuable lessons about hard-nosed negotiation and business skills on the outside of universities. I'm very grateful for those skills now, and that understanding and that mindset about it not being personal, it's business. So I bring that with me now in my current job. When I came back into the university as a research partnership manager, and now as director of research partnerships, there's a couple of things that are really important in my current role, which is about how do you actually make sure that the translation of the research has real world outcomes, and commercialization and planning for commercialization. Unfortunately, universities in Australia, and I don't know about in Japan, but in Australia, we actually need to make sure that we have some chance of, I guess, if you want to use a business term for it, but we have to kill what we eat. There's cause for us to be thinking about survival. And so we need money to be able to do the research that can translate into outcomes, and that's expensive. But if we don't make sure of that now, then I don't know why we're doing the research in the first place. So those would be the things that I think I've learned along the way that make my job now an important one in my mind.
Yeah, so, I think just Lisa, you bring very good points about translation again, and I think business and academia, they don't talk. Right, so the default researcher, so when I, again, I'm going from this career perspective, I ask them, who would you like to be if not faculty? They say, well, I'd like to do teaching, or I'd like to go work on industry, because the assumption is they can get a job on industry. They just blink their eyes and they got a job, and they can't, because they don't speak the language. And what are your outcome? What is the project management? What's your product? It's so terrifying for academics. And I think for the research administrators, it's a tricky thing to get them on this level. Yeah, so, and I think just kind of business to academia, academia to business, vice versa. I think it's a great point.
Yeah, so I think Lisa is a kind of a catalyst, connecting between two different cultures. That's Lisa's point, I think. And working as a research manager needs some skills, as we have already discussed, and these skills can be acquired after we get positions, like in the form of on-the-job training. But we also have some opportunities to learn some skills specifically necessary to these administrative works. And I think in Japan there is opportunity in Alman J community. In the annual meeting, they will have some class before the annual meeting, and they also Lisa and Elly and I are the member of NCURA, so it would be a good idea to understand what kind of opportunities will the NCURA can provide for the prospective managers to learn some skills. So can you probably, Elly, can you introduce the NCURA, or what the NCURA will, the activities of NCURA a little bit?
Yeah, so yes, following what Tadashi just said there, getting the resources on understanding, on the job is great, but you also have to have some sort of support from memberships, and NCURA is one of those memberships. And the three of us are part of that, Lisa, Tadashi, and I. So I'm just going to share my screen, and the three of us can sort of discuss and add to the discussion on this. There we go. Great. Hopefully you can share you can see my screen. So the idea is just to sort of give you an idea of what NCURA is and what the membership sort of has to offer for you as well. So there we go. So we're going to go over basically what NCURA is, how we can support you as a research manager, and opportunities and resources that are available through NCURA. So NCURA it's one of the original research administrators organization that was set up back in 1959. And it was set up by research administrators who were starting out in the land of not knowing how to support researchers, and since then it's sort of grown quite significantly. The organization has a diversity and inclusions commitment. There are various, like I said, resources are available, and we also have it's made up of 8 regions, and so it originated in the US, and it's grown significantly now. There's an international region, Region VIII. So Tadashi and Lisa, feel free to chime in whenever you like as well, as I quickly go over some of these slides. And so the international region is made up of administrators from all over the globe. And so we have currently over about 150 members from, I can't remember how many countries, but yeah, we've got representations from Europe, from Australia, Japan, Africa, South America. So we cover quite a bit of ground. So NCURA actually has various standing committees. I won't really go over these in detail because probably not as relevant. But I sort of we want to discuss a little bit more about what NCURA can offer you in terms of your career, and what the membership has available as well. So the membership is an individual membership that you can sign up on your own, or attach it to your organization. And if you do leave that university or organization that you're working in, you do take your membership with you. And part of what they offer is like a portal, and there's various resources that you can access from NCURA. So some of those resources include benefits of having a magazine. There's various workshops and conferences, online education, access to a directory and a portal where you can actually enter into different communities and collaborate and connect with other research administrators around the globe. And I know that I use the network quite extensively when we want to sort of understand a little bit more about funding in maybe Canada. I'll use the portal to reach out to individuals in there and try to sort of initiate discussions with them. Some of the resources as well that are available through NCURA are policies and procedures that are available through other universities. So if we're working in the international space and dealing with particularly like US, we know there's a lot of compliance requirements. So there's a lot of great resources from other universities in the US that provide some of the policies and procedures that can actually help us from an international perspective to develop our internal resources as well. So there is a magazine that is available through members, and this is released 6 annually. There's various articles in there as well, and you can sort of, as a member, you can participate as well to provide and write for the magazine. So there's conferences and some education things are available through NCURA. So there is an annual conference. This year, it's a hybrid version through a virtual and live, and it's always held in DC around August. There's also a financial research administrators conference, pre-award research administrators conference, and there's also each region holds different conferences as well. So with the Region VIII, the international region, we generally partner up with other regions in the US for an international conference. NCURA does offer traveling workshops. So these traveling workshops, they're now sort of virtually done, but before they were live in person. So these sort of workshops could be anything from, maybe you wanted to understand a little bit more about export controls or financial research administration. And these are peers that are part of NCURA that provide some of these traveling workshops. There's like online learning as well. There's various online conferences and workshops. I think I'm trying to think if I'm missing anything. Lisa, Tadashi, let me know if you think there's anything that I'm missing from here. You've got access to publications, and some of these publications are around understanding some of those compliance and regulatory requirements that generally, again, around the US funding. So some of those resourcing. So for anyone that deals with international funding, especially coming from the US, they've got some of these great resources trying to help us navigate those requirements. So there are a lot of global initiatives as well. So some of the NCURA global initiatives that are offered through, there's a fellowship program, and this is intended to sort of bring research administrators, sort of reduce barriers, collaborate, whether, as a member, we apply for these sort of fellowships, and potentially, you may want to understand a little bit more about how funding in Japan works, and you may want to put in an application to, go to Japan, for example, or, a US administrator wanting to come to your home country to understand how, research is managed in your home institution. There's also global workshops, and there will be one coming up, being held in Italy this year in Italy, Genoa, I believe it is. And these global workshops are sort of set up by regions, to discuss things like basics of research administration, financial administration, funding around the US, and there's grant writing workshops as well. So some of the opportunities that are available as a member as well, volunteer opportunities. So you can volunteer to write an article in one of the magazines, potentially volunteer at a conference. And there's national and regional positions as well that you can help put your hand up to as a volunteer. And I would say that's all I had in terms of going over some of the benefits about an NCURA membership. Other than just sort of volunteering, it's a great resource to use to build your collaborations with administrators around the globe. Great. Tadashi, Lisa, anything you'd like to add?
Thank you very much. I don't have anything to add. I think I liked actually NCURA magazine. It's for me a little bit difficult to go through every time I receive the magazine, but the content is very, very useful. And also NCURA send the NCURA extra in the form of email that covers some of the important scientific news, which is very much relevant to research managers, like some stories or change of regulations in NIH or NSF, and some of the important research achievements. So just briefly taking a look at this information, I think I can get some sense of what's the world is going on. Otherwise, I may be just stuck to the domestic research events. So these magazines and the email contents will be very important.
Yeah, and I kind of think, just for this professional organization, so we're finishing up, within a couple of minutes. I know everybody needs to go back to work. These are great organizations just to move your career along, because this is where you get networking. Elly, this is kind of what you was mentioned on the slide, but it also know your gatekeepers for your next positions. Right? Sometimes when we go for promotions, we're trying to navigate complexity of our workplaces. This is where you get the information. So Lisa, we can talk to you and maybe you can tell us, not now, but if I were to reach out to you, you can tell me how to be a director. So what do I need to do? What steps I need to do? The same goes for Elly. So what do I need to do to manage those grants? Who I need to talk to? And professional societies, are your way in, right? Just kind of to this insider knowledge. So to finish up, if you have any questions, we will offer you to go to spatial chat provided by NCURA. But what I wanted to put first in the chat is a very short survey, because as you can imagine, so we're trying to start something. This is a very inception, as I said, trial and error. We really want to hear from RMAs, URAs, people who support research from all over the globe, and we want to hear your stories. We want to interview you intimately for about 20 to 30 minutes to see what are the challenges you are facing, what are the obstacles, what are ups and downs. If you're interested, the best way to reach us, probably through this. So there's an option in SurveyMonkey, if you would like to just be part of the future shows, or you can go to mojaview website. Please, or LinkedIn, connect with Tadashi and I on LinkedIn. I'm very active there. If you know somebody who would love to just participate, we really want to spread the word beyond NCURA, beyond mojaview, beyond Japan, Australia, to really reach out and say, you're not alone. Research managers, it's a tough profession. Working in higher ed, it's not that easy, but we're here to help you. So if you have 2 minutes, fill out this survey. And if you want to chat with us, I'll be posting the spatial chat link. But for this, I would love just to express my gratitude to Elly and Lisa. I know it's lunchtime and it's tough and it's busy and remote and all kinds of things during the pandemic, but you did find the time to be here to talk about yourself, which is great. We never get a chance to talk about ourselves, right? Your journeys are fantastic. And I hope it was as helpful to understand what you do and how you do it. I enjoyed it thoroughly. So thank you so much. And Tadashi, thank you for just organizing this mojaview and your first thing. So I know you will say that, but I'm super excited to be here since, as I said, I don't have a job. I'm on a life sabbatical. So this is an entertainment for me. So if any questions, you can type in chat. And here's the link for, so this is the link for spatial chat that you can log in and chat with us there. I will zip, and any last minute words and suggestions, comments, please feel free to unmute yourself and speak up. Thank you. If not, then just we'll see you later. Bye. Thank you.